Hello and welcome to CS230. This is lecture 16 and lesson 1. And in this lesson we're going to get started with MongoDB. We're going to look at Mongodb Atlas. We're going to look at NodeJS and PHP, accessing MongoDB locally and using your remote Mongodb Atlas account. And we're also going to see how we can make this work in an online playground for people who just can't install the software locally. Right, so we're going to use repl.it again as our playground in this particular one. So you're going to need access to a server for this module. And we're going to be developing tools using PHP and Node.js to access the database, this NoSQL database, just as we did with MySQL in the last lectures and lessons. Okay, so something to say right from the outset is that I've not been able to use MongoDB Atlas, which is that remote service for a MongoDB database, using PHP and online playgrounds. I've tried phpfiddle.org and I've tried repl.it. And the reason is because PHP requires you to install all the low-level MongoDB driver using PECL. So say PECL install MongoDB, and then you have to use Composer to install the higher level MongoDB driver, and that's with Composer require MongoDB/MongoDB. And it's not possible to perform these, as far as I'm aware, using the playgrounds. I've tried several, 5 or 6, and I do like PHP, fiddle.org and repl.it, but it is impossible to do this at all. The other thing to note is that for the PHP, I also installed a new version of PHP locally, and that's independent of the PHP version that came with macOS Catalina, and it's independent of the one that came with XAMPP. The other thing is I didn't add this to my path, so that the defaults for my regular setup don't change. So I specifically accessed my PHP using /user/local/bin/php, and it came and installed with Homebrew if you're a macOS user. Similarly, my PECL is /user/local/bin/PECL. So, and I work with my PHP from the command line only, and I will do for this particular exercise as well. But if I needed to use it in a web environment, I'd have to modify Apache's http.conf, and that would be the Apache that comes with Catalina, my macOS operating system, or the one that comes with XAMPP, and I'd need specifically to point to my version of PHP that handles MongoDB. Okay, so the other thing to note as well is that if you're actually going to work with PHP and MongoDB, it will be necessary to install and set up a lot of local support software. And you're going to have to do all this stuff manually. Here, for your PECL, you have to use Composer. You might have to install a new version of PHP as well. So it might actually be easier to use Node.js for your assignments. If you don't have permissions, or if you're unable to install software locally, then you're going to have to use a playground for your assignments. That means you will have to use Node.js. And if you want to install MongoDB using the MongoDB driver using Node.js, you just say npm install MongoDB. It's a bit easy. And if you use repl.it, you won't even have to do this. You just upload your file, and if you require MongoDB, it will install it for you. Okay, so we talked about installations already. So you do need to install MongoDB, and the best way, of course, to do this is, and it's fairly straightforward, is to go directly to the installation guide, here, and that will provide you all sorts of instructions for your specific operating system. And remember that I'm going to have a look at how to do that in a couple of minutes. Okay, but remember that you're going to download the community version, okay, from the download center, and that provides you, and again, that provides you with access to the Mongo client and the MongoD server. And, you need to run that server in the background locally in order to be able to access it using Mongo. And the instructions, with the installation documents and the manual will tell you everything you need to know about how to make that work. Okay. And you can find out lots of information about the Mongodb Daemon at this link here, and you can find out information about how to run and work with the Mongo client or Mongo shell here. Remember, they're included as part of the MongoDB server installation. You can also download the shell. It's available as a separate standalone package if you just want to use the remote MongoDB database and don't want to install it locally. And of course, if you don't want to do things from the command line interface, you can always download some visual app as a client, and Studio 3T is a really good app here. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward to do. I've downloaded and installed all of these things. I have them running locally. We can have a quick peek to see that I've got my MongoDB here, so it's running in this up in this one here, and I can just show. and I have it running, and I've got some collections here. This version over here in this window is my remote connection. So I also have it running remotely using my connection, which was to the Mongodb Atlas service. So I'm good to go with those two. Okay. So Mongodb Atlas then, that's an alternative to downloading MongoDB and running it locally. It means that you end up having a version of MongoDB running in the cloud, much like you do with your remote MySQL. And you click on this link here, mongodb.com/cloud/atlas, and it gives you a fairly straightforward run through on how to set up an account. You'll need to register your email address, verify your email address. You get started and create a user for your MongoDB, and then you can work away. So if you connect, I think I'm connected. This is the page to install MongoDB. So it's at the installation that you can work through this for your particular operating system. It's not too bad. And then there's the community edition, and I'm using macOS. So I pretty much follow the instructions for macOS, and it worked beautifully. So it's fine. You need to go to Atlas if you want to log in and create your Atlas account, which is that remote MySQL server. So I have it set up and running, and I'm logged in here. So let's see how I did this. Okay, so I connected, went to the Atlas, I registered, I filled in the details here. When I logged in, I specifically said I wanted to create a free cluster. I don't want to pay for this service. Then I need to create a starter cluster, and I'm given the options. So I'm using the Amazon Web Service, and I'm choosing Ireland. I'm creating here. And then I get information on the cluster tier that I have. It tells me the information that I have available and various settings. I did nothing. I just accepted the cluster 0, and now I'm in. Okay, and that tells me this is my starter information, the details on my database. Okay, so I also got an email that tells me welcome, and I can sign in, and it just verifies really. So I'm back in here, and you can see that if I switch back to my online service, this is my cluster, and I can connect to my cluster here. If I get information on this, if I want to connect, I can look at my collections that I currently have in here, and it's I've just got a customers one here, so it's not too bad, and it's telling me something about a query that I have, just finding the first element of that. And you'll recognize some of these data because we use them when we work with our remote MySQL example as well. And I can verify that. I can go back to my terminal. This is my cluster here, and I can just show I can go back to this window over here, and I can say show collections, and there's the customers, and I can find and there we go. There. So we're dealing with that cluster, so it's fine. And what I see here is equivalent to what I see online here. Okay, so everything works just nicely. Okay. And there's a few things you need to be able to do. In order to be able to access this, I needed to whitelist my address, and so I had to whitelist my current IP address. You can have as many of them as you like, okay? Or you can just open it to everybody, which is not a good thing to do, but you can do it and make life easy for yourself. So when I did that, I whitelisted my connection, but I hadn't actually set up a user. That was the next thing I needed to do. I didn't tell them what my username, user, and password were, and so I created a user called admin user and gave it a password here. It's fine, and so now I'm pretty much good to go. I need to log in, and I've done all of those things. I logged in, and I can connect with the shell. And this, if you look at these, it tells you exactly what the commands are. I want to collect from macOS. Tells me how to download the information if I hadn't downloaded it already, and then I was able to connect, and I've just shown you those already, so it's not too bad. I'm able to connect, and it just works just fine. Okay, so one of the things that I saw back up here were these commands in order to be able to connect. So if I want to connect with the shell, it gives me the commands that I should do that. If I want to connect with Node, it tells me how to do this and so forth. And if I go back quickly to my setup here, you can see the command that I use. So I use this MongoDB service to my cluster, the admin user, which I created, and here is my local one. And you'll notice that my local one is using a different user, and I set all that up personally as well. So once you're good to go to have a local and a remote, you can start doing work and start playing with the service. Okay, and I just issued that command to log in. So again, in order to be able to access, you can say Mongo specify the port. It's always going to be 27017. You use your authentication. I'm authenticating against the database test here, and for this particular one I didn't need to specify because it's well it is I'm authenticating against test as well, so it's not so bad. Okay, and that's not the actual cluster. You'll get a cluster name when you log into Atlas, and it will give you the command how to on how to do this and make this connection directly when you use Mongo, which is the command line interface. Okay, so we're in good shape. So now let's look at how we might connect and access it with Node. So much the same way as we used to connect using Node to a remote MySQL, we need to connect to the client here. Okay, and I have a separate I have my connection details held. Basically, I have my URL string for connecting with the password details in a separate file, and it's called connect, and for my local, and connect Atlas for my local. And as well, all that does is just contain some information on that, and I'll give you a dummy file that shows you how to do this. But really, I'm extracting the URL here. Then I'm creating a new Mongo client. I'm using assert here, which is a module that you use in Node.js for unit testing. Just we're going to have it, and it's recommended. And then so I make a connection, and I'm just making connections. If I get as far as here, I know everything's okay, and I've connected. I just log that I've connected successfully to the server, and then I close. So you connect, do your work, close, and I'm specifying I'm going to work on this database here, and that's it. So I can go and check that. I have them in my this PHP. So here we go. I literally just copied and pasted it here, and it's fine. So we can, let me see if I can just open that file for you. So this is what the file looks like. If you want to, I will load in the file. So I have a dummy file here that exports a URL. I have my actual user and password in here, and my my cluster and the database I'm accessing. So I have a specific one set up for accessing using. I'm using the connect for my local connection and my connect Atlas for my remote connection, and I don't have to show anyone my passwords. So it works. So, okay, let's run this. And of course, I have these set up ready to go. I'm going to test my connection. And I'm connected successfully to the server. And which one were we using? We were connecting to our local connection. Let's uncomment this. And now let's connect to the Atlas server. Save this. Head back down here. You'll notice it was a little bit slower to connect, but I did connect successfully to the server. So it just works just fine. Okay, so we now can connect to Node.js, with Node.js to our Mongo locally and remotely. Next thing we need to do is make sure it works within REPL. So I have my copy here, and of course I'm connecting directly to the Atlas connection here. Nothing else has changed. It's fine. You'll notice that if I run it, I connect to the server. Let's run it again. A little bit slow in terms of that connection, but it's connected. Okay, so there we go. It's easy to do with Node.js. Now, let's go back and have a quick peek at how we might do this with PHP. So I have PHP set up already. And again, the program is very similar to what we had previously. This time I needed to be loading all that high-level information here that was set up by Composer. Okay, and you have to have that set up and loaded. I did it once and I just copied it around. And also I have a similar setup here where I'm saving my password in here for a remote Mongo or a local Mongo. And that just gives me the URL to make the connection. I set up a Mongo client here, and again I'm using the URL that I picked up from either whatever my database configuration file was here, and you saw me do that with the MySQL also. If I get to there, I'm connected successfully, and here I'm just doing something for fun with the database. I'm trying to look at the connections. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the PHP version. Okay, and I'll switch over here. And this is my test connection. Again, I literally just copy and pasted it into the markdown document, and it works just fine. I'm connecting here to, okay, I'm connecting to the remote Mongo. So let's have a look and see what happens when I do this. And I'm using my PHP installed here, and I'm, okay, I don't want to use that one. Yeah, I want to test the connection. Let's have a look. And it connected successfully to the server, and I was able to pull out some information. You'll notice we've got this record for Lisa Casey, and if you remember that we had opened our Mongodb Atlas here, and we saw Alicia Casey, so we were able to pull out the information for her using PHP. And remember, we cannot currently use PHP in an online playground with PHP Fiddle or with repl.it. I've tried this already, and I'm not able to make that connection. But it works just fine with Node.js, of course. Okay, so let's switch back. Okay, we've got to the end. Okay, summary. So we've learned how to set up and use MongoDB locally, how to use MongoDB Atlas, and we can access the database using Node.js, and either remotely or local, and we can use it for PHP. And if we want to use an online playground, then we're just stuck with Node.js on repl.it, and you have to, of course, have your MongoDB Atlas set up in order to have a full playground solution. That's it. Thank you for watching.